Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, your journey, our passion. Dow Automotive Systems, improving durability and increasing design flexibility with Betamate structural adhesives at dowbetamate.com. And by Hyundai. Experience the 2011 Hyundai Sonata today at hyundaisonata.com.
This is Autoline Daily for October 20, 2011, and here are all the changes that happened since yesterday. You know, sometimes as an automaker, you just gotta do what you gotta do. Argentina is coming down heavy on companies that are hurting its trade balance. And as it turns out, one of those companies is Nissan. So the Japanese automaker just agreed to export $52 million of Argentine wine. Let's see, with the wholesale price, I'd say that's about 10.4 million bottles. Earlier this year, we reported on how raw material prices were soaring. Well, now, just the opposite's happening. Prices for iron ore are plummeting. Same goes for aluminum. And this is all because the Chinese economy, while still growing, is starting to slow down. We warned that car prices would go up as raw material prices climbed, and they did. But now with raw material prices going down, don't look for lower car prices. That is not how it happens. Car sales in the U.S. have steadily increased throughout the year, and the top economists at Ford and GM say next year will be even better. Ford's senior economist, Jenny Lin, says the main reason is that the average car is over 10 and a half years old. GM's chief economist, Mustafa Mahattaram, says sales will be better, but don't expect huge gains. He says that based on the U.S. population, car sales should be around 16.5 million vehicles, but that's not going to happen until 2014 or 2015. And speaking of car sales, over in Germany, sales are up 8% compared to last year. According to Wards, that strong growth made up for losses elsewhere in Europe. Overall, the EU saw just a 0.7% increase in sales last month, and through September, sales are down 1.1% for the year. But I keep saying, how can the economy be that bad if so many people are buying new cars? And the answer is, the economy is not as bad as it's made out to be. It's not to say it's good, but it's not as bad as it's made out to be. A simple hatchet is enough to fell a mighty redwood. And misappropriating company funds can have the same result in the corporate world. As we reported earlier in the week, Ernst Lieb was fired from his lofty post as the head of Mercedes-Benz's U.S. operations. Now the Wall Street Journal reports that Herr Lieb was canned over allegations that he used company funds for personal expenses. As a 36-year veteran, he had been in charge of Mercedes' U.S. operations since 2006. There's more than one way to skin a cat, or in this case, to start a car. Autoblog posted this neat little video showing a pair of guys getting a hatchback running with little more than a couple of jack stands and a piece of rope. They lifted one of the car's wheels off the ground and then wrapped a line around said wheel. A swift pull was all it took to get things moving. Apparently the battery was too dead to crank the engine, but it had enough juice to run the coil and spark plugs. But I gotta ask, wouldn't push starting this thing just have been easier? Maybe they were bored, or maybe it just makes for a good YouTube video. Speaking of you, coming up next, it's time for You Said It.
Dow Automotive Systems, driving solutions in automotive, commercial transportation, and aftermarket with innovative products like Betamate structural adhesives. Lighter, stronger, safer. DowBetamate.com.
And now it's time for some of your feedback. Pedro Fernandez saw our report on how hatchbacks are making a comeback in the American market, and he kind of shakes his head in amazement. Let's see, he says. Vega, Pinto, Chevette, Citation. It's a miracle that the hatchback survived that past. All I can say, Pedro, is that probably a lot of the people buying hatchbacks these days are young enough to have never heard of those cars. And Seawolf doesn't like the executive who's been named to replace Ernst Lieb at Mercedes-Benz. I'm surprised that no one has said a word about Lieb's replacement, he says. Werner is a bean counter and should never hold such a position. In my opinion, There goes any progress that's been made under Lieb. Making Werner head of MBUSA is like making De Lorenzo head of the UAW. Well, see, Wolf, I don't know, Werner, but my guess is that will only be a temporary assignment. TJ Martin wants to know why so many cars are catching on fire all by themselves. With today's announcement that the Mini Cooper S is now amongst the ranks of spontaneous combusting new cars, the number of automobiles doing so is becoming staggering. Isn't it about time someone does an in-depth investigation into this ever-expanding trend? TJ, I'd agree if it turns out to be true that these things are catching fire all on their own. Maybe there really is a problem, but cases like these always make me suspicious. I've got to wonder how many of these so-called spontaneous fires are just people trying to collect on their insurance and get out of their car payments. Swing Low 33 laments the tragic IndyCar race in Las Vegas where race driver Dan Weldon was killed. R.I.P. Daniel, he says, this race should not have ever happened. Weren't there complaints that the track was too small for the number of cars in the race? This could have been avoided, in my opinion. Swing Low 33, I think you're on to something. I think IndyCar turned a blind eye to the dangers, all with the idea of making the racing more, quote-unquote, exciting. And the same goes for NASCAR. At the super speedways, they all know there's going to be the big one, a big wreck where all kinds of cars get smashed up. They know it's going to happen, but they do nothing about it because they know it's good for the ratings. I think IndyCar could even be vulnerable to a lawsuit over the race in Las Vegas. Knowing how dangerous that track is for those cars, that race should have never been run. And we'll be getting deeper into this topic tonight on Autoline After Hours. Join me and the auto extremist Peter De Lorenzo for some of the best insider discussion in the business. We're also going to have Jack Hollis, the head of the Scion brand, as well as Michelle Krebs from Edmunds.com. And you can check it out tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time at www.autoline.tv. And that wraps up today's show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.